attacks. And joining us now with more on this is David Tafuri, former Obama campaign foreign policy advisor and a former State Department official. David, thank you for being with us. What a big day.
Thank you.
So off the top, just your reaction to that, a top ISIS leader killed by U.S. forces in Syria. And of course, this comes just shortly after killing Omar the Chechen, another top ISIS leader. What is your response?
Well, this is really important. You know, we've been talking about fighting ISIS, here in the U.S., in Europe, after the Brussels attacks. There's a law enforcement angle to fighting ISIS. That's happening, and that's really been the focus this week. But we have to remember that if we really want to make progress in terms of defeating ISIS, we have to fight them where they're headquartered, in Iraq and in Syria. That's why this is such an important development. They've taken out the number 2 person. That has a significant impact that creates a leadership vacuum in ISIS. This person that they took out was doing a lot of the operational leadership, so it leaves ISIS stranded in terms of its mission, possibly. It also will create some infighting within ISIS as to who will take over, and that has to continue to happen. The operations by special forces are also important. This was not an airstrike. This was an actual on-the-ground attack by special forces, and that needs to happen more for us to make progress on the ground against ISIS.
Well, and David, that is the big question when a top commander is killed. How much does this weaken ISIS, and is there someone else just waiting in the wings to take over?
Well, there's always someone else who's going to pop up, but there may be some infighting, which will, create some dissension within ISIS. And this leader that they took out was very experienced. He had worked under al-Qaeda in Iraq. He had been in prison and had been radicalized in prison further. He was a committed, experienced leader, and he was obviously having some success with ISIS in terms of controlling some of the terrorist attacks. So that's why this is very, very important. Someone else will pop up. We'll have to go after him too, and we have to go after the ground troops, the ISIS ground troops in Iraq and Syria.
Yeah, there is a lot going on in Syria right now. Russia's recent troop withdrawal from Syria, wondering about the future of that country, still battling a civil war. Many analysts suspected Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, emboldened by the presence of Russian military power, would be weakened by its sudden withdrawal earlier this month. But the New York Times is reporting just the opposite of that Russia pulling its troops out won't stop Assad's confidence and ambitions. And in fact, Syrian government forces on the ground have only gotten stronger. David, I want your thoughts on that. It seems like when it comes to President Putin, Bashar al-Assad, it's a battle of the egos here.
Well, you would think with Russia pulling out, we would be a little closer to the possibility of a diplomatic, political solution to this crisis. But the two obstacles to this, to having a diplomatic solution, are still the same as they have been for the 5 years since this crisis has gone on. And those are that Assad needs to step down because that's what the opposition is requiring. It's a fundamental request by the opposition and by the Western powers that support the opposition. And second, Iran and Russia do not agree to that and continue to support Assad. You would think maybe with Russia pulling out, it would be more likely to possibly compromise and support Assad stepping down, but that has not been the message so far in the recent talks. The U.S. and the Western countries have got to find a way to induce Russia and Iran to pressure Assad to step down. That's the only political diplomatic solution that will work.
Sometimes we lose sight of the civil war that is going on in Syria with so many other things going on. How much of this emboldens ISIS?
Well, of course, this emboldens ISIS. When there's dissension among the 5 Security Council members, and there's a divide between the U.S. and Russia on how to solve Syria, and there's Iran, which has normalized relations in some ways with the U.S., but has a distinct position on what should happen to Assad. That creates a vacuum, and that allows ISIS to continue to operate, to continue to be powerful. That dissension. There needs to be a united front against ISIS and a political solution to the future of Syria, which includes Assad stepping down and there being a coalition government that's representative of all the moderate forces and groups in Syria.
David, with number 2 in command of ISIS now being killed today, should there be a concern about retaliation?
Well, ISIS is always going to try to retaliate. I think, yes, they probably will try to retaliate. We saw the Brussels attack was possibly retaliation for the arrest of Abdul Salam, and perhaps there will be a retaliation by ISIS either on the ground in Iraq and Syria or in a terrorist attack in Europe or somewhere in the West, and possibly ISIS will be trying to do both.
David Tafuri, we appreciate your insights on such an important day today. Thanks for being with us.